Margaret Ismailia, who is a tutor in the Department of Theatre and Arts at the University of Ghana. So today, how we'll be managing the talk is that questions will be done through the chat, and we ask you to put your questions there. And as the talk progresses, these will be answered at the end. Colin will kindly moderate all of this for us. The talk will be roughly sort of 30 minutes, and then we have about 20 minutes for questions, with the view of finishing around 1-ish. So without further ado, please welcome Professor Paul Kurzweil and Mrs. Margaret Ismailia for their talk on mitigating social and environmental harm through participatory theatre, a case study from artisanal and small-scale gold mining in Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Can you hear me? I guess you can. So this talk is going to be really on a project that is sort of only got about halfway for various reasons, which you can probably guess already. So I'm a sociolinguist. I do variationist sociolinguistics, but I got interested in work in development and language a few years ago, 20 years ago, in fact, when I met a man at Reading who was an expert in that area from northern Ghana, and he became my PhD student. And ever since then, we've kept in touch, and we've given presentations together. We've even published an article together. So me doing this kind of work is not that surprising, perhaps. So that's me. And I wonder if Margaret, if you're there, if you could briefly present yourself.
Thank you, Paul. My name is Margaret Ismailia from the Department of Theatre Arts, University of Ghana. I was invited to this project by Professor Nanaba Amfo, who was in the earlier project that was done, based on which this project was to be done. And I'm grateful to be part of this discussion. Right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to share my screen now. Just bear with me because I have to click share computer sound. And then I go here, share that, and then click here. So this is our project. Well, this is the title of the talk. The project has about the same title. Without further ado, I'll go on to the next slide, which gives you some more information. So this is the name of the project. It's about participatory theatre and the mitigation of social and environmental harm. A case study from artisanal and small-scale gold mining in Ghana. So you might wonder why we're interested in that particular thing and theatre. Anyway, you can see a list there of everyone who's been involved. And I then move on to the next slide. And this is the outline of our talk, okay? So I'll try and answer that first question. And then we'll talk about what participatory theatre is and why it's valuable, and also how language fits into it. And then the methodology that we planned. And then at the end, we'll tell you a little bit about what we managed to do. And I think there's some instructive things there as well. So why gold mining in Ghana? Well, it's actually a very major industry. About 1 million people are involved directly in the small scale version of it, but it's both corporate and small scale. So corporate, this would be international companies, this would be national companies, state companies in Ghana. And among the artisanal and small scale miners, these are individuals who are involved. There are also some Chinese people as well. Ghana has recently overtaken South Africa as the biggest producer of gold in Africa. So I'll give you some idea of the size of this process. It leads to quite severe environmental degradation. You'll see, I'll show you some pictures of that in a few moments. So farming, forestry, fishing, and hunting are all affected in different ways as we'll see. There are human costs as well, and these are probably under-researched and under-managed. So there's crime. I mean, this is a high-value commodity, obviously. There's truancy from school because it's quite lucrative to go mining if you're a teenager. There's also above average amount of teenage pregnancy. And finally, there's danger both in the execution of this activity
and in the aftermath of the activity. The aftermath being once the miners have left, what happens to the degraded land? Well, what happens is that there are pits which are filled in with branches or whatever, and people tend to fall into them. So it's really quite a serious thing. Margaret mentioned a previous project. We'll call this the 2019 project, and this was really the basis for the current one. So it's assessing the potential for a more environmentally sustainable and socially inclusive small-scale gold mining industry in Ghana, is the title, a bit of a long-winded there. It assessed environmental and human consequences via desktop research. So there was so one of our number did quite a large literature review of this area. There's also facts and figures that are available in different ways on the internet and elsewhere. We're also still in the process of writing a discourse analysis around ASGM, artisanal and small-scale gold mining, and galamsey. Let me briefly pause on this term, galamsey. It's a Ghanaian term, and it refers to essentially illegal mining or other things that are illegal, but particularly associated with mining now. And legality is a problem because the goalposts get shifted quite a lot, depending a little bit on who's in power and so on. Galamsey is subject to quite large-scale campaigns in the media for anti-galamsey and by the government as well. So that's an interesting concept. We did focus groups and interviews, and part of the interest here was to get hold of people's perceptions of risks to health, livelihoods and environment, and also their attitudes to the danger to life, truancy and teenage pregnancy, as we said. And then we looked at gender issues as well, and in fact we've two of our number have, not myself, but two of our number have written a paper on that. So a couple of pictures now from last year's project. So this is a polluted water body, a river. And as you can see, it is not nice and clear. It is what they call groundnut color, because it's like groundnut soup, very much that color. This is a farmer who has been all but cut off from his land, which I think is a cocoa farm, by the mining. And as you can see, he's got a system of bridges and ramps and so on, so that he can actually get to his land. So, you know, he was actually quite upset about this whole thing and quite angry about what was happening to him. Next stage, okay, so this year's project, creating impact. So based on the 2019 project, how can we create direct and long-term impact on these communities? The GCRF put out a second call for impact development based on previous projects. And this is where we felt we could come in. We considered video as a means of creating this impact and participatory theatre. But we went for the latter because it seemed to promise more by way of community involvement and also measurable outcomes. And I'll come to those as we go along. The methods we planned, we chose two communities, Kwabeng and Asanafo in Atiba West District, which is about 3 hours drive northwest of the capital, Accra. This is an Akan-speaking area, or Twi-speaking area. There are minority groups with different L1s here as well. I'll come back to that. And this is the reason for choosing two places. One is that Kwabeng allows mining, Asanafo does not allow mining. So there's an interesting contrast there, which we'd hope to be able to bring out. We have planned focus groups as well to further explore the things that came up from the last project. We plan to do 2 participatory theatre productions, one in each town, and then compare and contrast and let the one feed into the other. So we would hire a stage manager and a professional videographer as well. So then focus groups again, so pre and post-performance focus groups to evaluate changes in understanding and attitudes to the issues that are raised. And then also a second follow-up series of focus groups 3 months later. So I want to hand on now to Margaret, who's going to tell us about participatory theatre.
Thank you very much, Paul. So I can now share my screen. Okay. All right, so participatory theatre is not a conventional theatre. It is a context-specific device performance. What I mean is that it is theatre that is created out of a specific situation by the people in that situation, for the people in that situation, to enable remedial action. So in this project, the situation was pollution of water bodies, loss of farmlands, degradation of the environment. So the theater would have been created out of these issues by the people in these two communities that were identified, and it will be shown to the rest of the community members. So that because individuals process situations differently, it will create an opportunity for ideas to be shared. What farmer A is going through, what farmer B is going through. So participatory theatre then becomes an approach for interaction, and also a tool to initiate action. So the question then is, how effective is participatory theatre? The effectiveness of participatory theatre lies in evidence of monitoring and evaluation of practices that have taken place over the years, as well as the fact that participatory theatre is widely used in delicate and complex situations. There are cases of ethnic violence across countries in Africa where participatory theatre has been used, as well as stigmatization in the case of HIV/AIDS. So knowing this background in how participatory theatre has been used in such delicate and complex situations, this project saw the capacity of participatory theatre in its execution. So for us to get participatory, to initiate a participatory theatre, there's a need for a facilitator. That is someone who will guide the performance, the creation of the performance, and also a community. So in this case, we had Kwabing and Asunafo, the two communities that were identified. And there's the need to create the performance out of issues. And the issues here in this project were the pollution of water bodies, degradation, loss of farmlands, and so on. And because the people are going to tell their own story, it is very important to get acquainted with indigenous knowledge systems and folk drama of these communities in question. And another key thing to ensure the take-off of participatory theatre is the interest of participants. Since they are going to tell their story, it is necessary to get participants who are interested, who are willing to tell their story, so that remedial action can be taken. So there are stages involved in this process. the very key thing and very important is the entry into the community. If entry is not that important, since you are an outsider, it will mark the whole process. So it's important to identify opinion leaders, gatekeepers of the communities, so that you will know how to negotiate and go around the subjects in question. So it is very important to establish good relationship with these gatekeepers. So in this case, the political administrator of the district was contacted, which is the district chief executive. Opinion leaders in the two communities, both traditional leaders and political leaders were contacted. So we had the assembly men of the two communities, unit committee members, and also the National Commission for Civic Education, that is the agency responsible for information dissemination. So, and also the key thing, another thing was contacting the security, because this is a very delicate case situation and minors will protect their concession. So it was very important for us to get the security informed of our presence in the district so that there wouldn't be any disagreements. After all these relationships are established, then the discussion begins. Talking with the community members, getting their ideas, how are they telling their stories, what is happening with mining in the town. So these stories are then analyzed, and based on what the stories are, the performance will be devised from these stories or these situations in the town. In devising performance or participatory theatre, the existing performative art of the community is very important.
We can't hear anything anymore.
Oh.
The sound is really, really bad.
Really?
We're sort of hoping it would get better.
Sorry about that.
There's something more you can do.
Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
All right. So I was saying that in creating the performance, it is important to situate the performance in the performative arts of the communities. How do they entertain themselves? How do they pass on knowledge? So the indigenous knowledge systems here are very important, and it's usually incorporated. And because this performance is going to be a mirror for these communities to look at themselves, it's important to represent accurate information. So before the performance is shown to the entire community, a pre-test performance has to be done, where checks and balances are done to ensure that language, expressions, and issues are presented accurately. Then the next stage is the performance. So on the performance day, community members are gathered, opinion leaders, stakeholders in the situation and the discussion are all present, and then the performance is done, after which there is a post-performance discussion. This is where the collective decision is made after telling your story, after recognizing and acknowledging that there is a situation. How do you change that situation? Do you even want the situation to be changed?
Hi, Margaret.
Yes.
Are you at all changing your position sometimes?
No, I'm the same place. I'm at the same position. I'm very sorry about that. You can't hear me.
When you start, like now when we are having conversation, I can hear you, but when you start talking in the presentation, it's very crackly. We can't hear anything. It just sounds like static electricity. Maybe we can try, a little bit again, but if it continues, then maybe we have to, ask Paul to continue.
Yeah, or sorry, Paul, if you were to share your screen and perhaps you just talk through, perhaps then that sort of takes some of the pressure off the...
So I talk through this. I think this is the last slide actually. for Margaret. I think it is. Let me have a look. Let me share my screen.
Yeah, so if you share your screen and Margaret carry on talking, perhaps that might help. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I'm sharing. I'm going to share my screen now. In a minute. Share screen. And where are we? We're here. And oh yeah, this is the screen where we were. Okay. So Margaret, can you, or I can talk about this if you like. Hello.
I'm very sorry about that.
It's not your fault. I think we're nearly at the end of this slide. Can you talk about this one?
Yes. Yeah. No, this one is better.
Can you see this one?
Yeah, we cancelled this one.
No, the sound is, there's a feedback going on. So would you like me to talk about this? I think I'll
Paul, in the interest of making progress, maybe you should, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. So okay. So the point about participatory theatre is that it helps community engagement and it helps people find solutions to identify problems. So here on this screen we have a number of studies. This first one from Ghana, I think. It's widely recognized as an agency for development and education, and this looks like a Kenyan name, I think. And it's recognized as a very effective way of achieving communication. So everybody has the opportunity to express themselves in an appropriate manner. And the important thing is that there's a sense in which this technique allows people to externalize problems, because they're doing it in public, in a sense. And then community members are listening, and then they can come up with their opinions. And we'll see as an example of that in the next portion here. So it's been identified as Margaret says, a tool used for stimulation, reflection, and learning for social transformation. Okay, so this is the last slide of Margaret. So in participatory theatre, the local languages are the norm, as you would imagine. But language choice isn't really raised as an issue, and it isn't really raised as a resource, possibly, for the theatre, and that's something that we would like to try and do. So in these two communities, Akan is the main language, but there are also smaller communities who speak a range of other languages. These are migrants from the north. And they depending on how long they've been around, they acquire some Akan, but many don't. They also tend to live in separate small communities or zongos as well. So between these different groups, the Akan speakers who actually, may own some of the land and certainly live in the area, and also people with concessions who are often local. There are tensions, and some of these then may be symbolized by the use of different languages. We'll see an example of code switching in a few minutes. But in our participatory theatre, what we wanted to do was to actually make language choice more explicit than it generally is. So let's look at participatory theatre in action. This was a University of Ghana student project earlier this year. So you're going to see a short video, which is actually a compilation of a scene from very much longer video, and then I will talk a bit about it afterwards. So here goes.
Good day to you all, and it's a privilege to have you all under this canopy to honor our invitation. And the reason why we are gathered here So we are level 400 students of the University of Ghana.
We're final year.
Studying theatre arts, specifically theatre for development. And then with theatre for development, what we do is to go into communities, identify issues in those communities, and then with the support of the communities, we aid in solving that issue.
Yo, London Yakasinga University of Ghana, TFD.
Okay, so with inquiries and then recommendations, we landed in this beautiful environment at Danfor at Zanya. Yes, so when we came, there were other issues we met, but then one issue that was dear to our heart has to do with teenage pregnancy.
Lower Bazana, Lower Banani, Seneko.
Christian. I'll see you. Hello, baby girl.
Hi.
What's up? Hey, Charlie, give me 360. Hey, I mean, my friend tell you everything. I'm the son of the vice president. You see that? I mean, it's Tiomo. I like you very well, very well. So I don't know. I want you to be my girlfriend. What do you think?
Your girlfriend?
Yes.
Hey. Okay then. Let me think about it.
You want to
think about it?
You want to think about it?
Yes.
Okay, you feel free and think about it, okay?
Okay, Papa President, be no no. Keep him a mess, can harm you with. Macmillan Macoclin. Macmillan no.
What was that? I dare
2020 Ghana, like it's a fact that we are used to maybe taking a boyfriend or something. When they got to you was a boyfriend. Even if your parents not talking to you or something, you are not ready to listen to them. So one thing I can say is that like you can go to them. But what the next thing to say here? You have to learn to protect yourself. That's the best thing.
Right. Okay. Can you all hear me still?
Yes.
Good. Right. Okay. So just a few comments on this. This is actually, so the man carries the girl off. So that comes in the very next scene. Here's a photo of that particular scene. So what was interesting about that, I thought anyway, was that the whole thing began in English with his scene. This is the first scene in the play, I think. And then when so he had this proposal, and then she went off and thought about it, and she then vocalized her innermost thoughts in Ga, which I don't know whether this was actually planned beforehand or whether it was something that she just thought was the right thing to do. I'm not sure, and we probably won't know. But that's what she did. So you have this sort of bilingualism, and then also you have the interpretation going on as well, from English into Ga and Ga into English all the way through. I guess it's because of the student project, it would need to be in English, but anyway, so that's what she that was that. A couple more scenes then, and so to give some idea of the atmosphere, the kind of conversation. One of the things is audience participation, as I said earlier. So here we have what I take to be somebody who is commenting on what's happening. One of the properties of this form of theatre is that the audience can actually has the power to steer the action, if you like, by being presented with some kind of choice, and then the audience responds. So in this case, it's fairly obvious what kind of choices are being made. So in this, the audience then has the issues externalized, and then they reflect on it collectively. Another scene, and then we move on to the final part of the talk, approaching the communities. Okay. So we wanted to use locally accepted ways of approaching the community, and the way that that we elected to do this. I should say I had very little involvement in this because I was here, and so the local people in the COIs over there in Ghana knew what kind of thing to do. There's this organization called the National Commission for Civic Education, which is a government-sponsored thing, which has branches throughout the country. And they were very helpful in actually identifying relevant people. So the relevant people were local politicians and community leaders at different levels. So you have, first of all, the district chief executive of the whole district of Atiwa West. He's the top guy. Then below him, you have assemblymen. And then below the assemblymen, you have unit leaders. There are also the police. And then finally, the chief's representatives. So all of these people need to be engaged with. And the rest of the talk really is that engagement, and that's of particular interest, I think. There were formal meetings with a presentation, mainly by Margaret, in Akan. The meetings that I'm going to show you, they lasted maybe 3/4 of an hour for the most part, a lot of discussion. Sometimes people were kind enough to interpret things for me, but that wasn't important. And then finally, we had libation with us for the chief's representative. So after the meetings, we obtained offers of support and a guarantee of safety from the police commander. Now some photos, before we get on to the meetings, of one of the ASGM sites. So here you see ASGM going on. There's some machinery on the hilltop there, and you see the kind of effect it has on the land. So this is a shot much closer up of that machinery, okay? And there were armed police there. We never quite established why they were there, but anyway, there they are. They were all very, very friendly and cordial. This gives some idea of what happens to the land after the mining has taken place. So as you can see, destruction really on a grand scale. So here's part of our team just having a look at the particular site, which was interesting. And then this is one of my favorite photos. One of the miners wanted to have his photo taken, and it was quite fun. I think he enjoyed himself briefly. And this is taken from inside a cocoa farm, looking out onto the site. And as you can see, the site is encroaching gradually on the farmland. Another polluted river, okay? And then, by contrast, a river that isn't polluted. And this river is in Asanafo, where there is no gold mining. And it's clean enough to be drunk. So this man who's drinking water is a plantain seller who came along the road and stopped here for refreshment, as did we. Okay, this then is the local branch of the NCCE, who were instrumental in setting up some of the meetings. And this is one of the first meetings in Kwabeng with officials in Kwabeng, which is the town which does do mining. So our group on the right and the local people on the left. This is inside the district chief executive's office. And so a presentation was done there, and Nene, the man sitting in the middle, gave that particular presentation. So he's a representative of the government in a sense, local government. You see the president's portrait at the back. This is the meeting with the district police commander. Same thing happened there, and English was only used really at the beginning for introductions, and then things moved into a calm quite quickly. This is the presentation that Margaret did to the unit representatives. So as I said before, the unit representatives are people who are part of the formal structures in parts of these towns, and they have some say in what happens. So again, you see, our group on the left and the other group on the right, and the formal presentation going on as well. This is another meeting. We're nearly there with meetings. So the man, this is in the non-mining town. The man in the green T-shirt opposite me is the local assemblyman, and then it's on the left is a woman who's the acting Queen Mother. So because the Queen Mother was not available, so she stood in for her. So Queen Mother in Akan societies is a senior female who belongs to the chief's family. And she's actually able to appoint new chiefs. She would have a lot of say in what happens in these places. So this is not the actual Queen Mother, but she was a representative, as I said. So here she is, and the discussion going on in quite a lively fashion. This went on for some time. After each of these meetings, there was agreement, and things were really quite smooth. So then a group photo really just showing you this, so you have the acting Queen Mother in front, and you can see that actually quite a lot of local people had turned up to this meeting just to listen, to see what's going on. Okay, more talk outside the building, which is the local library. Then we walk to the residence of the Anko Biahene, sorry about my pronunciation there, the King's chief bodyguard. And we came along with libation. So this is schnapps, 2 bottles of schnapps plus a 20 CD note. And this is the conversation that went on. So again, you see Margaret presenting, and then the chief representative opposite her and other people. So this is the last of the photos, and then just simply to say where we are with this thing. The pandemic and lockdown in Ghana really prevented us from doing anything other than what you've seen here. We couldn't get any extension to the funding, and in fact, 31st of July, today, is the last formal day of the project. Maybe there'll be a new call this autumn to be useful to be able to complete some of this. Meanwhile, we have a new British Academy project starting soon, which is about communication about the COVID-19 pandemic in 2 communities in Accra, starting soon. So that's really all I have to say, and I think I'll just stop sharing my screen and come back. So that's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Paul and Margaret, for that really interesting talk. And thanks everyone for bearing with us through our technical difficulties. We have about 15 minutes now just for questions. So if I could just invite anyone that has a question to just type it in the chat box, and then I'll read out for our speakers. So we had one question come in, but I think it's been answered in the chat. So I'll maybe just abuse my position and ask a question. So at the end there, Paul, you talked through this process of getting access to the community, and from all the pictures, I think you really highlight the fact that it's necessary to do quite a lot of meetings and these sort of really formal things before you can even start doing anything. I think for your project, obviously these were really successful meetings. Were there any kind of unforeseen challenges in any of these meetings, or any kind of obstacles that you came across, and how you dealt with them, if there was anything?
Well, I can briefly say, because I obviously I didn't understand what was going on, except when there was sort of laughter and claps and handshakes at the end. I just wonder if Margaret's there, if she can comment on that, maybe, if Margaret, if you can comment a bit, maybe. Margaret, is she there? Maybe she
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
All right. The question was whether there was any foreseen challenges. During our meetings, there wasn't any indication of reservation, because as the pictures show, the pictures that you showed, community members are concerned about the activity of mining in the towns. So they are willing to find remedy to this situation. So at the meetings, there wasn't any, we didn't see any indication of people not interested in what was being initiated in the community.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there were any particular issues here. I mean, what we don't know, we may even never know, is how it would have gone afterwards, you know, some months later. But the impression I got was that everything was really very smooth going through these particular structures. So.
Oh, thanks. So there's a few questions just about the actual funding and practicalities with that. So one, just asking if there's still a plan to do the participatory theatre and if it could go ahead without funding. Then another question just asking what specific scheme your project was funded by. Was it the tackling the UK's international challenges? So someone in the chat saying that their project was able to be extended. I'm
just seeing that their project was extended. So the funding scheme was GCRF QR funding, which is the scheme whereby money is channeled to different universities who then manage their own private schemes. So this is one of those. So it was in a sense internal money. Well, I had fully expected that when the pandemic came along and everything just ground to a halt in March and April, that we would be able to extend it, but in fact not. That's not possible apparently. And so, you know, if we do any more of this, then it would have to be under a new different scheme. And I've tried to inquire about that and haven't had any sort of answer. If anybody on here knows about that, it would be great. The project where just answering Janet Watson, it was not a part of the COVID. The new project that I mentioned is part of the COVID call, but that hasn't started yet. So that's really a separate question. Yeah.
Then just a few questions about the actual performances itself. Yeah. So in terms of what was planned, like what kind of performances would be done to show the dangers of gold mining, and yeah, what are your plans for this, and will the community that benefits from the mining be happy to participate in this?
Well, I can answer briefly, and then we'll ask Margaret as well from the theatre point of view. Well, we identified various, as I said, various issues to do with behaviour really, and to do with techniques, which could be then talked about. It may be easier and more obvious what you have to do if it's an AIDS, HIV performance, or to do with pregnancy. But that's what we would have done, and we would have actually figured that out as we went along. That's the technique really. So we have a bank of challenges that they face, and we would have selected from those, and we would have then worked with those. Margaret, can you comment on that? Would you agree with me on that?
Yes. The question was whether Boal's techniques would have, yes, we would have applied the forum theatre technique, because that is where the community members get the opportunity to discuss, to talk about the situation, and also to suggest the way forward. Since it is their situation, they need to bring out suggestions as to how the situation will be solved.
I mean, it's an economic problem as well, because of course gold mining is lucrative, but it also at the same time farming also does reasonably well. Cash crops, I suppose, cocoa farming. So it could be that the balance can be tipped the other way, more towards other things other than mining.
Thanks. So the next question is from Tom Bartlett. If you've got the chat in front of you, Paul, because it's slightly long, but I'll just read it out. So with regard to developing themes and concerns, was the method used primarily to build up existing concerns and attitudes in the community, or do you also see a potential for the planning stage to involve a negotiation of external internal concerns and voices and the collaborative translation of these into local knowledge, authority and performance traditions?
The very quick answer to that is yes. I mean, there is always an ambivalence or sort of duality between internal and external concerns here, and it's not. I mean, I portrayed these meetings as harmonious, which they were, but there must be all sorts of tensions within the community, which are to do with internal and external. You know, big money versus local money, people from outside coming in, people who already live there, those sorts of things. And that's a political thing as well at a government level. So there is all, I mean, you know, it can be really broadened out quite a lot. I wish, Tom, we were able to do that.
A question for Margaret now that Gladys is also discussing in the chat. So the term galamsey is used in the domain of mining, but it can be used in other domains. For example, a university professor can do galamsey. Could you expand on the use of this term in daily life in Ghana?
So as I have said in the chat, galamsey has acquired a lot of semantic extensions. And so if a university professor gets a job outside his or her regular job at the university, especially if it brings some good money, we refer to it as galamsey. In other job situations as well. So even in the corporate world, if they get a one-off contract which brings good money, we will still refer to it as galamsey. So it's acquired a lot of extended meanings, and maybe more meanings will even come depending on what situations arise.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. Another question that I had skipped over from Nancy was about the libation offering. And what budget item did you put the libation offering under?
Gladys can answer that, because she had to claim, she bought the stuff and she had to claim money. Can't hear you.
Yeah, where do we all right. It's difficult to explain some of these things. It is a tradition. Usually there are the thought behind it. Sometimes they will not explain it, but a lot of the times it's got to do with safety, it's got to do with security issues, and so you don't give the money directly to the chief or to the king or to their people. There are all kinds of beliefs, poisoning, using black magic, and so on and so forth. So you put it on the floor. They will not tell you that we don't trust you, but they say this is the tradition. So there are philosophies behind these traditions that they don't quite explain them explicitly. So they become like superstitions, but there are real cultural philosophies behind them.
Good.
Thanks.
Possible to save the chat questions somehow, or do they disappear?
Yeah, they'll be saved, and if there's any that we don't get to just now, we'll do a little write-up of the talk and put answers to any questions we don't answer just now on our website as well, along with the recording of the talk. I do think we have covered most of the questions in the chat at the minute, but we do have some time left if anyone has any additional questions. Maybe while sort of just waiting on any final questions coming in. Our next talk in this series is going to be in a fortnight, so on the 14th of August, and Clyde and Carno and Momadou Jing will be discussing a project on multilingual education in the Gambia. And you can register just where you registered for this talk on our website, multilingual-learning.com. And just had another question come in, so both for Paul and Margaret. So how did you choose these specific communities to work with?
Shall I try answering that first, and Margaret and Gladys can come in? Well, so they're within the goldfield, a goldfield that's relatively near to the capital, and it's the place that we went to. I didn't go actually, but last year, so where the first project was carried out. The idea of choosing two localities within this really came out of discussions with people. Oh, Bongo. Sorry, Dom, my colleague put a rather strange thing there on the chat. So, and the idea that one of these towns is a mining town and the other one is not a mining town, and that's due to local decisions. So even though they're within the same borough, as we'd call it in this country, they have a certain amount of autonomy, and they can actually prevent things like gold mining from going on within their boundary. And so we thought that was a great idea to compare these two communities. I don't know, Gladys and Margaret, do you have anything to add to that?
Okay. Paul has said most part of it, but we also looked at the population dynamics. Pabing is the district capital. It's got more migrants than Esunafo, which is more rural. And the Esunafo, which is non-mining community, they are surrounded by mining communities, and the danger that it's only a matter of time. The young people will put pressure on the older people to allow mining is real. And so we wanted to show the drama of the effects of the negative effects of illegal mining in the surrounding villages to these people. And then we also wanted to show the drama from Esunafo as a model to the mining communities, so that as a matter of remedial, they can see what options they have if they don't want to mine, if they are to stop mining. How are the Esunafo people surviving? They rely on farming. Their lives appear much better than the mining communities. So we are using Esunafo as a model and using Kwabeng as a way, a tool to bring remedial to the mining communities.
Yeah.
Thanks. That's us just after 1 o'clock now, so I think we can finish up there. But thanks again to everyone for coming and for your questions. And thanks very much to Paul and Margaret for delivering a really excellent session.
Thank you.
Hope everyone has a nice day, and hopefully see you again at one of the later talks in our series.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thanks.